Latin America erupts against social inequality. In several countries, organizations demand justice and solutions to economic and social crisis. The Spanish government and the self-proclaimed government of Catalonia, the Generalitat, will resume the dialogue table and stop the conflict in the region. 1 month since the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan, social and economic uncertainty reigns in the Central Asian nation. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, this is from the South. I'm Ray Gomez. Roadblocks and protests against the Ecuadorian government take place this Wednesday throughout the country. In the context of the national strike, the main routes have been blocked by transfer workers, and the agricultural sector has declared itself in emergency. Student movement is also protesting against the budget cuts and attempts to privatize educational institutions, the latest politics of the Guillermo Lasso administration. Since Lasso took office last May 24th, fuel prices are on the rise as the continuity of the neoliberal policies implemented by former President Lenin Moreno. Hence, Ecuadorians denounced the breach of the campaign promises of the current mandatory. Protests are taking place also in Uruguay, called by the main labor union of the country. The 24-hour protests demand social improvements and reject the law of urgent consideration proposed by the government of Luis Lacalle Pou. The goal of the central organization gathers settles rural workers, agricultures, the network of popular parts, students, culture, sports, and the trade union movement as a whole. Bank and transportation workers joined the protests without affecting service. Among the demands are an increase in the education budget, ensuring the feeding of children through school canteens, ensuring the continuity of the community teachers program, and salary improvements for educators. Dozens of Mexican indigenous people mobilized on Tuesday to demand the return alive of a dozen members of a Yaqui tribe 2 months after their disappearance. The demonstrators demanded justice and asked the Mexican government to restore peace in the territory they inhabit between the municipalities of Guaymas and Cajimi in the state of Sonora. The march took place in the indigenous community of Loma de Bacum, but was also replicated in the capital of Sonora, Hermosillo, where representatives of the Yaqui ethnic group protested at the University of Sonora. During the demonstration, the relatives of the disappeared told that the victims were out to look for food and drinks to liven up in the festivities of the Virgen del Carmen, which are celebrated every year from July 14 to 16. The demonstrations are taking place ahead of the September 28th visit of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador to indigenous authorities to officially sign the justice plan for the Yaqui people. Also in Mexico, despite tighter borders controls implemented by the federal government, thousands of people continue to travel towards the United States border at night without making any stops and using any means necessary. This is how thousands of asylum seekers crossing Mexican territory are trying to reach the north of the country. Despite the large group held in the southern state of Chiapas, more than 2,000 people, mostly Haitians, are at the northern border, and almost 500 in the U.S. territory in the makeshift camps. In the last few hours, 2 babies were abandoned and their bodies discovered at the border. The kidnapping and subsequent release of 22 asylum seekers raised the alarms of the humanitarian organizations, which warned about the high risk people face, especially children.
We are in what is the hydrological curtain, where drinking water is safe for its distribution in Ciudad Acuna, Coahuila, and we see that people, mainly of Asian nationality, are using this crossing to reach the United States. Migration authorities have detained them over the banks of Rio Bravo, which is why asylum seekers build these small camps. This group of approximately 400 people arrived yesterday in Acuna, and more will come. They are camping, and as you can see, they are returning to Mexican territory since yesterday. In the afternoon, they return, buy some food, and again go back to U.S. territory, where authorities detain them on the banks of Rio Bravo.
United States' first migration policy have caused countless deaths in its south border. People running from wars and drug cartels traveled to the U.S. To accomplish the so-called American dream. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol officials found 4 bodies in Texas. The bodies were from Central American travelers, added to 100 others who have died while trying to cross the southern border this year. The border police found the bodies in different points of Texas, in Rio Bravo, at Sulphur Town, the rural road 481, and in Carrizo Springs. The Mexican consulate in Eagle Pass is running the identification process. Venezuela's Attorney General's office opened an investigation against former opposition deputy Juan Guaido. The Attorney General, Tarek William Saab, announced that Guaido is being investigated for the crimes of usurpation of functions, treason, theft of assets, and crimes of plotting. The former opposition legislator also faces accusations for his involvement in the Monomerous case, a petrochemical company subsidiary of PDVSA in the Colombian city of Barranquilla, with a production capacity of 1.3 million tons. The National Assembly, in contempt led by Guaido, proclaimed a directive that would subvert of Ivan Duque's government to control of the Venezuelan company. The Colombian Superintendents of Corporations flagrantly assaulted the state-owned company, announcing the takeover of administrative control after the progress was made in the negotiations between the opposition and the government of Venezuela and Mexico. This Tuesday, Guaido thanked Ivan Duque's government in a press conference for the decision, sharing that this way the country's assets are being protected. And Haiti's former First Lady Martine Tieno was summoned to court as part of the ongoing investigation into the assassination of her husband, President Jovenel Moïse. The justice has summoned different key figures to clarify the events surrounding the assassination of the former mandatory, where she herself was the victim of the multiple shots in the abdomen and arms. Martine Tieno required surgery due to the seriousness of her wounds. The criminal investigation develops amid tensions aggravated by an alleged conversation between current Prime Minister Ariel Henry and one of those responsible of Moïse's assassination. In this context, Prime Minister Henry announced the dismissal of Prosecutor Beaufort Claude hours after the now former prosecutor asked a judge to open an investigation against the head of government as the defendant in the assassination of President Moïse. The Prime Minister justified the dismissal by a serious administrative misconduct allegedly committed by Claude. Beaufort asked also the immigration authorities to prevent the Prime Minister from leaving Haiti. We'll be back after this very short break. Welcome back. This Wednesday, the Spanish government and the government of Catalonia, the Generalitat, resumed the dialogue table in order to stop the conflict in the region. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and the president of the regional executive, Pere Aragonés, held a face-to-face meeting this afternoon local time at the Palau de la Generalitat to reactivate the dialogue. Sanchez assured that this approach has managed to calm the atmosphere in the Catalan community. Members of the Catalan delegation have unleashed a clash between Together for Catalonia and Republican left parties, which are the partners of the government. Pedro Sanchez also asked the independentists not to focus the meeting on the referendum of self-determination, an issue that should be debated and could lead the dialogue due to deadlock. On Wednesday, the President of the European Union Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, offered her annual State of the EU address. Von der Leyen affirmed the fights against COVID-19 and climate change will be the main priorities for the bloc, as she opened the remarks praising the response to the pandemic. Other topics of interest included migration, respect for rule of law, and European defense policy. After commenting on vaccine access inequality worldwide, she announced that the EU is upping its donation commitment by a further 200 million doses by mid-2022. Additionally, she said that the other priority for the EU will be to strengthen its preparedness for a future health crisis through the creation of the European Health Union.
When it comes to climate change and the nature crisis, Europe can do a lot, and it will support others. I am proud to announce today that the European Union will double its external funding for biodiversity, in particular for the most vulnerable countries. But Europe cannot do it alone. The COP26 in Glasgow will be a moment of truth for the global community.
EU Chair von der Leyen vowed to boost humanitarian aid to Afghanistan as she pledges the China's seven-nation bloc stands by the Afghan people.
We must continue supporting all Afghans in the country and in neighboring countries. We must do everything to avert the real risk that is out there of a major famine and a humanitarian disaster. And we will do our part. We will increase again humanitarian aid for Afghanistan by 100 million euro. This will be part of a new, wider Afghan support package that we will present in the next weeks to combine all our efforts.
Sequoia National Park was shut down, and its namesake giant trees were potentially threatened Tuesday as two forest fires burned in steep and dangerous terrain in California's Sierra Nevada. Both fires were projected to advance in the direction of a giant forest, home to more than 2,000 giant sequoias, including the Generalitat tree, the largest on Earth by volume. Park authorities said the closest flames were about 1.6 kilometers from the grove, adding that 75 people were evacuated. The Colony and Paradise fires are named for locations where they started, where they ignited by lightning last week. Their combined sizes grew to more than 12 square kilometers. President of the United States, Joe Biden, called for investment to tackle the impact of climate change and extreme weather events in the country during a visit to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in the state of Colorado.
Extreme weather, we're seeing, is only with more ferocity. And we're blinking code red as a nation, and we really are. The only debate is around what we do to confront this crisis. And that shouldn't even be a debate. You know, we have to invest in being more resilient because of the impacts of climate. The climate change is occurring today, not next year, not 10 years from now. And we have to make the investments that are going to slow our contributions to climate change today, not tomorrow. And here's the good news. Something that is caused by humans can be solved by humans.
We have more news coming up after this very financial break. This Wednesday, September 15, marks 1 month since the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan. A lot has changed since the Taliban movement took power in the country after the final withdrawal of U.S. and NATO troops. After 2 decades of war and deaths of thousands of people, security has greatly improved. Yet the Afghan economy is in ruins despite hundreds of billions of dollars invested in development over the past 20 years. According to the UN, the situation threatens to plunge 97% of the population into poverty by the humanitarian crisis has led to the displacement of millions of people, both within the country and abroad. Humanitarian Afghanistan now faces uncertainty as to what direction the new government will ultimately take. Tensions on the Korean peninsula escalated after Pyongyang test-fired 2 ballistic missiles. Seoul, in an apparent response, launched a ballistic missile from a submarine. With South Korea's successful submarine launch, it became the 7th country in the world with the advanced technology, raising the prospect of a regional arms race. The test, supervised by President Moon Jae-in, came hours after North Korea's test and as China's foreign minister visited Seoul. South Korean authorities said the missile was fired underwater from its newly commissioned submarine Angshan-ho and flew the planned distance before hitting its target. China concluded the first multinational peacekeeping exercise on its territory, dubbed Shared Destiny 2021. Troops from Thailand, Mongolia, and Pakistan joined China's armed forces for the 10-day exercise at the military base in Kishan Country in central Henan province. The scenario of the exercise was a joint operations of multinational peacekeeping forces, and the exercise was held in close to real battlefield environment, set in accordance with international, professional, and realistic combat standards. Chinese military sources said earlier that the Chinese military, as a proactive practitioner of the vision of building a community with a shared future for mankind, would continue to take a more active part in UN peacekeeping operations and always be a staunch defender of world peace. Representatives of the Cuba Pharma Business Group and the World Health Organization will meet on Thursday, focused on process of international recognition of the island's anti-COVID-19 vaccines. Rolando Perez, director of Cuba Pharma Science and Innovation, said the island has maintained constant communication with representatives from WHO in Cuba and Geneva. The representative of WHO and the Pan American Health Organization in Cuba, Jose Moya, explained that their working team would be set up to review the results of the clinical trials, production processes, and quality of the three Cuban vaccines. The vaccines to receive the evaluation will be Abdala, Soberana O2, and Soberana Plus, which already has authorization from the Center for State Control of Medicines and Medical Devices for its emergency use in the population. Health authorities in Cuba stated that pediatric vaccination is moving forward without any incidents and reaffirmed the vaccines are safe and have been used in children for decades. The head of the Department of Primary Health Care at the Public Health Ministry, Maria Elena Soto Antanza, reaffirmed that children and adolescents, unlike adults, showed a high immunity rates. Antanza also clarified that children between 11 and 18 years will receive their first dose this week, although for now those with chronic diseases would not be immunized. The mass immunization started on September 5th in the central province of Cienfuegos and in the Isle of Youth Special Municipality.
Well, it is with great pride and satisfaction that we explain the mass vaccination campaign is underway in the pediatric age group to protect our children, our adolescents, and thus to contribute to the restart of the school year, as explained by our Deputy Minister of Education.
The World Health Organization stated that there were about 4 million COVID cases reported globally last week, marking the first major drop in new infections in more than 2 months. In its weekly update, the UN Health Agency said every region in the world saw a drop in COVID-19 cases compared to the previous week, although the worldwide number of deaths decreased to about 62,000, with the sharpest decline in Southeast Asia. There was a 7% increase in deaths in Africa. The highest numbers of cases were seen in the United States, Britain, India, Iran, and Turkey, and the highly contagious Delta variant has now been reported in 180 countries. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I am Ray Gomez. I thank you for watching.